Okay, so free-to-play fire rotation. If you pulled for Lin, your matrices are obviously gonna depend on what you have or what you're running, but I think regardless of matrices, you're always gonna be starting with Lin. If we're doing Bygone, let's say we're doing Bygone, right? I'll do a test right here. This is how I play right now, my rotation for my comp. You do 4 dodge attacks, you switch weapon back, switch to Lin, you switch your relic here, you switch cube with cloak. Maybe you're not running cube because you have better relics, right? You use your cloak, you go back into relics, and you use your cube. You use both relics, swap, use both relics, swap, and then you use Lin skill, straight into Ruby, straight into Hummer. Then you're just gonna do 1 dodge attack and 2 flying ones, so your clone stays near the target, and then dodge attacks. And then you watch your buff bar. Once your 3 stacks from Hummer runs out, you're gonna use your skill into Ruby discharge, into Ruby skill, into Lin discharge, into Lin skill, and then back on Hummer. And that's pretty much the entire rotation. And then you just keep watching your buff on the bottom, the 3 stacks. It's a bit confusing because you're gonna have, if you have Lin matrices, you're gonna have 2 3 stacks. And you pretty much just have to pay attention to the lowest one, because you should be refreshing the other one. So yeah, that's pretty much my rotation, right? It's pretty simple. If you have Lin matrices on Lin, or you have Shiro on Lin, you always start with Lin, in my opinion. Also, if you don't have any of those two and you're just running random shitty matrices, you still start with Lin for the damage buff and for the passive damage she provides. For bosses, in this comp I would always use, not always use Ruby discharge, but a lot of time. Let's say I'm in Lin skill, right? I've just used Lin discharge, I've used Lin skill, and I dodge and get Fantasia. On bosses, I would use Ruby discharge. On non-bosses, I would use Humor discharge, and I will get the 6 dodges off. Lin pretty much replaces 0 in the buffer comp. So yeah, and the only real main DPS Fire has is Humor. If you were free to play and you roll for Cobalt, your comp is gonna look a bit different. You're gonna use Cobalt dodge attacks instead of Humor. It's pretty much the same rotation, but with Cobalt dodge attacks, and maybe Cobalt discharge over Ruby discharge in certain situations, right? But it's gonna look similar, the same. You just replace the Humor with the Cobalt, in a sense. You're playing a bit more fast swap comp because you don't have those 30 seconds of 3 stacks that you get from Humor C1, right? These stacks, you don't have those in Cobalt, so you're gonna be swapping a bit harder. This is the reason why you stay so long on Humor, right? Because you're using these stacks. And you just gotta pay attention to those while you play. It's pretty much the time to swap when those runs out. If you for whatever reason didn't roll Lin and you're running King, this was the scuff comp I would run before. I'm not gonna change matrices, right? But if this is the comp you're running, you will always start with 3 stacks Humor. You'll do your entire relic rotation, and you'll start with your Humor skill. And you'll just do your dodge attacks. You keep an eye on your 3 stacks while doing mechanics. At some point you'll learn to count the dodges. And then you switch into king. And you do this. And you hit it once. And this is for bosses, right? And then back to more. If it's 2 mobs or more, you will never touch Ruby, okay? So let's say it's 2 mobs. I'm doing an AoE floor, right? I start with my Humor skill into dodge attacks. It's like 5 dodges, I think. 3, 4. Yeah, it's about 5 dodges when your skill runs out. And then into king. And then into Humor. And that's pretty much the rotation. The only 2 things you use, right? You will never use Ruby in this comp. You're pretty much just using Humor. I think you should always be running Humor main DPS if you're playing Fire at the moment, unless you roll for Cobalt, which I hope you didn't as free to play. But yeah, Cobalt just replaces Humor in this comp pretty much. It's pretty straightforward actually. The hardest part is lining up Lynn's skill with Humor's skill, right? They don't quite match up. And Ruby for the most part is just a stat stick. You don't have to use Ruby discharge. Only on bosses. On AoE pools you can use Humor, right? If you don't have good matrices or background matrices on Ruby, I would not use Ruby. So let's say you don't have background matrices on Ruby, right? Obviously if you're a whale you're gonna have Ruby matrices and you're gonna have Cobalt matrices. And you're gonna be using Ruby to stack those matrices. So let's say your Ruby is running let's say your Ruby is running 2 Shiro, 2 Samir or something like that. It's running whatever it's running. If you're running 2 King, you can use Ruby to shatter for the damage buff, right? But if you're running non-buffing matrices on Ruby, if you don't have any buffing ones, you'll simply just be doing Lyn skill into Humor discharge. And that's pretty much the rotation. This is pretty much the rotation. You just spin, keep track of your stacks. Into Lyn skill. See, this is gonna be a bit awkward, right? Because Lyn skill is not gonna be off cooldown. Then you press Humor discharge. And then you repeat, right? And that's pretty much it. It's a lot less damage though, without the buffing relics. Or the buffing relics and matrices. But Ruby isn't really worth using it unless you have buffing matrices. You can have Shiro on her. You can have Lyn on her. You can have Ruby matrices on her. You can have King on her for the shatter buff. So when you shatter you get like 10% bonus or something like that. I don't remember on top of my head. Let me see. Grant 8, 10, 12, 14 damage boost. Yeah, so if you have King on her, you'll use Ruby to shatter, right? And that's fine. My suggestion is if you do have one 4-piece Shiro on Lyn and one 4-piece Lyn on Ruby. Because you're always starting with Lyn regardless of your matrices. So you have to run Shiro on her to get the damage boost on the start. And the damage buff for over 50% HP has a good value on Lyn because she's off field damage, so she will always be doing damage. So she will utilize this 2-set Shiro bonus a lot better. And she gives you the 4-set really easily. 2-set Lin works in the background, so you don't need to worry about it. Oh, actually, it's the 4-piece that works in the background. You don't need to worry about the 4-piece, right? It will handle itself whenever you use Linska. The 2-set Ruby Discharge insta-stack it to 5. Her skill also insta-stack it to 5 stacks. So she's really good at using the 2-set Lin. Which is why you see me use Ruby Discharge in my comp. Because I'm getting the 2-set Lin from it. And then I swap to Huma with the 2-set Lin still active for the 18 seconds. So I'm using Ruby purely as a buffer here for a resonance and for a 2-set Lin. And then I'm obviously using Lin for sub DPS and buffer. And on Huma I would run Shiro, or I would run Samir and Huma if you have it. If you for some reason don't have Huma, if you didn't finish that gachapon, you can run Shiro on Huma, but you've already used 4 Shiros on Lin. You probably don't have 6. Crow is really good. You can use Samir Crow, which is pretty good, but Shamir Huma is the preferred one to run on her. If you are running the Huma Ruby King comp, I would put 4 Shiros on King, and I would start the fight with King and then transition into Huma. It's a little clunky doing it that way, but it's gonna be your best way. Otherwise, I would run 2 King, 2 Shiro on King, or 2 King, 2 Crow. Something like that would be fine. And then obviously run the normal matrices on Huma. And then Ruby, you can run whatever on her you want. If you have buffing, you run buffing on her. If you don't, you just put anything on her for stats, right? And that's pretty much the entire flame comp. If you didn't roll for Lin and you have 0, whenever I swap to Lin, you basically just swap to 0 to try and keep his stacks off. You pretty much need C6 from what I know to actually keep his stacks relatively up most of the time. So you're just using 0 as a buffer instead. I can't really show or test the 100% optimal comp with 0 because I don't have him. I just don't have him, right? But yeah. For relics, I do have a relic video, and I did show in the start of the video how I do boss relics, so that's pretty much everything. It's a pretty simple comp. If you got any questions, I'm free to answer them. And I think that's one thing when you are using Huma. Try only use 1 dodge while you are in shield form, because this dive still does 4% damage, and this does 4% damage. But in X form, this dive is really clunky, right? It takes so long to get off. So you want your dodges for the spin, because the spin is a lot better in X form. So if you are at max dodges, you will do 1 dodge, and then you will do aerial dodges. Jump and then dodge downwards, right? And jump as soon as you land on the ground for less animation. Or else you're gonna be using a lot of time on the ground. Let me see if I can show you here. And into attack, right? Look how long it takes before I can attack. But if I do it like this, it goes a lot smoother. There's no animation, so you just jump right after. So let's say we have 3 stacks, right? The first thing you're gonna do, or 3 dodge stacks, the first thing you're gonna normal dodge, and then this. And then into X form, and then jump, and then straight into spins. You almost always wanna keep 1 spin, so you can proc and take it if you need it. And that's pretty much everything. I hope it helps. Fire comp, kinda simple, but not really simple. Huma is what makes it somewhat simple right now. gonna be more complicated with Anna and stuff. I'll make a video when she comes out probably. Thanks for watching.